In today's show, I'm going to take a look at players who are underperforming for fantasy basketball. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. You're in your fantasy playoffs, you're getting to the end of your Roto League, whatever it is. Your trade deadline is most likely past. That's why we're not talking about buy lows and acquiring these guys, just talking about guys who are just, not playing well. And whether there's a reason for that, whether they can change that around, and what we can expect as we move forward. So let's take a look at that right now, starting with some category league players. Jerami Grant. Remember all the hype about Jerami Grant at the start of the year? Wow, man, Jerami Grant, top 30 player. Shit, yeah, look, he's awesome. Wow, what a pickup. He is, over the last 3 months, outside the top 100. He's the 70th ranked guy for the year. He's 150th for the last month. And 233rd for the last week. And this is not anything to do with random rest games. He just hasn't been as good. The efficiency has fallen way off. He shot 48 from the field last year. He's at 43 this season. His free throws have dropped down as well. He's not blocking really any shots at all. He doesn't get any steals. His assists, his rebounds are comically low. 3.3 rebounds over the last month. He's scoring a lot. Almost 20 points per game. But what else is he doing? I'd say, look, despite being one of the biggest surprises of the start of the season, he's been one of the biggest disappointments since then. Those numbers are damningly horrendous, really. For a bloke to be averaging, that's Andrew Wiggins type stuff, to be averaging over 21 points per game over the last 2 months and not be a top 120 player, that is Wiggins. Because you're doing nothing else. You are hurting in both percentages. You're not hurting in free throws. You're just not really helping at just 80%. You're not really doing anything positive outside of some okay block numbers. It's really disappointing. He's not hitting his threes in any volume. No rebounds, no assists, no steals. Good scoring, bad field goal percentage. And it feels like I'm shitting on him because I am. He has really, really fallen off. And at the start of the year, I apologized. I said, look, I hated the decision that he made to go from Denver to Detroit. I hated the decision that Detroit made to put him into the number one offensive role. So I said, there's no way he can do it. And then at the start of the year, I went, you know what? Shit, I'm wrong. Jerami Grant maybe can be that number one guy. He can't. He can't. He's getting the high usage, but it's not resulting in good basketball, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It's not resulting in great fantasy numbers. I know that much because they have fallen. And again, we will probably look back at him over the course at the end of the season, and we'll take a look at his rank and go, 70, that's about right. I think his draft spot was at like 90 or whatever. And you go, yeah, pretty good win. But when you consider that he had that top 30 run for about 2 months and everything else after that has been pretty bad, I'd say in the end it ends up being a bit of a disappointment. And again, do I think he's going to improve from where he is? Maybe a little, but I'm not holding out huge amounts of hope. Bob Covington. 65th ranked player this year. We know he had that nice top 40 rank run for a while where I did caution a lot about the three-point shooting is going to fall off. And in the last 2 weeks, he's the 147th ranked player shooting under 32% from three, 35% from the field, not getting steals, and averaging 6 points per game. This is the thing with Robert Covington, is that he shot poorly to begin the year. He had a run of, he was like 45% from three when he has literally never been a good three-point shooter at that. He's a good volume three-point guy, but he's not a good accuracy three-point guy. It has turned to absolute shit at the moment, 29% from three over the last 4 games. The problem with trying to work it out with Covington is, when does the switch flip back the other way? Because he'll do this. He'll have these stretches, which are great, and these stretches which are terrible, but when does it stop? But even his steals are gone. 2 steals in the last 4 games. 6 steals in his last 7 games. Like, we want Robert Covington to get us 1.5 to 1.8 steals per game to get over a block per game, and even that's disappeared. 0.9 blocks, like 6 blocks in 7 games, with 6 points and only 1 3 per game. That's really bad. That's and shooting bad numbers. Yeah, shooting 100% from the line. Wow, that's great on one attempt. 1 attempt per game. Sorry. It's a real struggle for Covington at the moment, and you always look at it and you drop him and you go, shit, I regret that. Like, look how well he's playing. But we have literally less than 3 weeks to go in the entire NBA season. You've probably got 1 to 2 weeks left of fantasy playoffs. Like 2 weeks, hopefully, at most. Do you expect Covington to turn it around in that time? He's got 4 games left this week. I'm not convinced that he gets it turned around in time, personally. Donte DiVincenzo has some run when he gets like top 100 type numbers, but 205th over the last 2 weeks, averaging 7 points per game, shooting 38% from the field. And the reason that you have DiVincenzo is to get steals. He has 2 steals in his last 5 games. Like, that's obviously not enough. And what else is he doing? Like, the only positive category he's had this year is steals and marginally above average on threes. So when the steals disappear, he's offering you nothing. I would not be I think he can be better than this, because obviously steals, he can have 2 steals in 5 games, and then he can have 4 steals next game, and all of a sudden he's back to averaging 1 steal per game. And then that whole number just magically changes. And it's why we have to be really careful, especially when we're looking in the 80 to 180 type ranking area of fantasy ranks, is that steals are such a huge influencer there. If someone comes in, and it's part of the reason that D'Anthony Melton is like a top 110 ranking in 20 minutes, because he averages 1.5 steals. I love Melton, but that's part of the reason those numbers get really bumped up. And we need to be really careful of that. So while we can look at rankings and projections for DiVincenzo, it really comes down to, are you getting steals? Does my team need steals? And if those 2 things, the answer to those 2 things are no, then he has no value. He can be better than this, but again, wouldn't really bank on it necessarily. Guys, Locker Room is the first social audio platform made for sports fans. The app is free to download, and once you're in, you can talk with me, other fans, athletes, and insiders in real time about your favorite team or sport. I'll be hosting rooms on full Locked On Fantasy Basketball on Locker Room once a week on Fridays. It is the perfect place to join conversations about the NBA, and you'll find fans just like you on Locker Room for watch parties, debates, post-game breakdowns, and of course, reacting to big news and rumors like the news that DeMarcus Cousins has signed for the rest of the season. That's big news according to ESPN. You'll have a chance to chat with me and might even have a chance to be featured on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast through our Locker Room conversations. Go download the free Locker Room app now, currently available on all iOS devices, and be sure to create a profile, link your Twitter, and join the NBA group for the latest league updates. Follow me at JoshLloyd48 to be notified whenever my room goes live. I know you don't want to miss it, so on Friday it'll be live at some point, and I can't wait to hear everyone's thoughts on their fantasy basketball teams. I'll see you there. Locker Room is changing the way that we talk sports. All right, next bloke, Dejounte Murray of the San Antonio Spurs. 62nd ranked player this year, but outside the top 115 over the last 2 weeks. Why? Well, the shots, he just can't hit anything. He's down at 67% from the line, which is dreadful. He's hitting 35% of his twos. Now, amazingly, he's hitting 43% of his threes on 4 attempts per game, which is actually way up from what he normally does. So he's got the long-range ball going. He just can't hit anything else. So I feel pretty confident. Now, look, I look at Jerami and go, yeah, I'm not sure. Look at Covington and go, not sure. DiVincenzo, not sure. I look at Dejounte and go, yeah, I'm pretty confident he's going to get better than this. Like, I know that he's not going to remain shooting 35% from 2. He can be a high-quality finisher. You know, not the best, but still high quality for a point guard. And he's at 48% from 2 this year. So I know this is going to come up. He's not lacking steals. His assists and rebounds are at the same level. He's increased his 3-point volume and 3-point percentage. It's his free throws and his 2-pointers that are off. That'll come. I'm not really worried about that. So I think we can expect a pretty decent turnaround coming from Dejounte Murray. So I'm okay with that one. Jayson Tatum similarly. Now, you might look at this and go, Josh, he was on a roll. And he was. There was a 2-week period he was like the 7th ranked player. In fact, he's the 10th ranked guy over the last month, which is up from 18th over the course of the season. But over the last week, when you needed him the most, he's the 109th ranked player. Why? Because you look at it and you go, 21, 11, and 5.5 is really bloody good. Like, that is really good. That's the Julius Randle special right there. Like, they are good numbers. And then you go a little bit deep and you go, oh, okay. 2 steals in 4 games. 0 blocks in 4 games. Oh, you're also shooting 34% from the field and 31% from 3. Like, big yikes. That is really the case there. The steals and blocks are annoying, but hitting 34% of your threes on absolute insane, well, not insane volume, but 33% usage is going to kill you. Like, that is 77 field goal attempts and you hit 26 of them. That hurts, mate. That hurts your team's field goal. It's not quite, but it's almost unrecoverable for a week in fantasy. And that's why he is down as low as he is. That will turn around. He is not, much like Dejounte Murray, he is not a 35% 2-point shooter. He's a 50% guy, probably around that mark. He's not a 31% 3-point guy either. He's 38 and above. It is going to turn around pretty clearly here for Jayson Tatum. So I'm not really worried about that one. Let's look at some points leagues, blokes. Kyle Lowry, 5-game week coming up. It won't be a 5-game week for Kyle Lowry. Don't worry about that one. But he is over the last month averaging just 27 fantasy points. That's well down on the 35 that he's been averaging. Why is this happening? Well, he's not scoring. 11 points per game. The assists have dropped. But it's really just the scoring. And the usage is down. 22 down to 18. The shooting numbers are off. His last week, he's averaging 9 points. Still 7 boards, still 7 assists. Didn't get a steal in those 2 games. He's way off with that scoring and with the shooting. And I do think that'll improve. Now, I think he only plays 3 games this week, to be fair. And I think that he'll continue to rest games as we move forward. And that could make him a drop, especially with how he's playing at the moment. But this is a dude that is the, 58th ranked player over the course of the season. So he's obviously really good on a per-game basis. But we are having a huge slump with games missed at the absolute wrong time of the year. Khris Middleton is the 85th ranked player for points leagues over the last week. Just 30 points per game, which is good for a lot of people, but not when you're averaging 36. Now, to be totally honest, Middleton has been just slowly decreasing over time. 35 over the last 2 months, 34.7 over the last month. Just everything seems to just be dropping off. His scoring is dropping off. He's not that he ever does, but he hasn't blocked a shot in 2 weeks. His efficiency has dropped off a little bit as well. He doesn't get high steal numbers anymore. A lot has dropped off with Middleton, and it just continually gets proportionally worse, like every sort of week as we move forward. But it's really fallen off here in the last week. I do expect him to be a little bit better than he has been over this last week with just the 30 fantasy points, because what's happened there, instead of averaging 5.5 assists, he's averaging 3.5 assists. So I don't really have any reason to doubt that Middleton is just not going to get assists anymore. So that'll come back up. So there's another two or so points per game. 3 points per game. Assists are worth 1.5. So it's definitely 3 fantasy points per game. And then the 30 turns into 33. And then the rebounds, which are down from 6 to 4. There's another 2 points. And there you have it. There's your 5.5 fantasy points. That pushes him back up to 35.5, which is basically on average. So it is a slump for Middleton, but it's not something I'm worried about. I am worried about Damian Lillard, who in category leagues is horrendous at the moment, like outside the top 100. But even in points leagues, he's not the greatest points league player. But only 39 fantasy points over the last month. He averages 45. He's down at under 40 again over the last week. Why? Assists are down for Lillard. Scoring is down. He averages 28 points per game this year. He's at 23 per game over the last 12. CJ McCollum is having a real impact. And the fact that the shooting is just way off for Lillard is massive. And I am not convinced that it turns around. He has had... No, I've said this before. He's played with CJ McCollum for years, and it's never been a problem. I do not know what the difference is this year, but when he plays with CJ, the numbers are off. The shooting's off, the scoring's off, the usage drops. When really it should be CJ taking that back seat. But there is something off about that combination this year. And we've seen it in 2 separate stints. So I'm not ready to say it's going to reverse. It might, but I'm not ready to have confidence in that. When you go to buy a part for your car, why would you go to a local chain auto store? That seems like the biggest waste of time you could possibly undertake. If you're looking to repair your car or get parts, You don't want to go somewhere where they're going to charge you more money just because you're not a professional. We've got other shit to do. We don't need to worry about that. That's why we go to rockauto.com, a family business serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go to rockauto.com to shop for auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. Best of all, the prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low, and they're the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Why would you spend up to twice as much for the same parts? Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. All right, let's go on to this guy now.
It's Big Vucevic.
Yes, it is. Big Nikola Vucevic. Over the last week, he's under 40 fantasy points, and that's still really good. But the guy averages 46. He's the 10th ranked player this year in points leagues, which is actually amazing. I didn't know he was actually ranked that high. So why? Why is he down? Well, he's only playing 31 minutes a night over the last 4. He's scoring 4 fewer points per game, even though Zach LaVine isn't there. He's not getting to the free throw line at all. His blocks, which aren't good, they've been cut in half. And he's turning the ball over more, from 1.8 up to 2.8, which is, that's a -1 there. You're missing half a block again. There's a -1.5 you've lost there. You're scoring 4 fewer points. There's 4 points already off your scoring. So we're already talking, there's the easy explanation for why you're 6 points down, right? You're just scoring 3 points fewer. You're not getting to the line. Your blocks have gone and you're turning the ball over more. Now, I think when LaVine comes back, that'll ease up that turnover number. He'll probably get to the line a little bit more because he'll be doing a little bit more stuff closer to the basket on pick and rolls. And I think the scoring should go up. So it is obviously not ideal. It's inopportune for him to be struggling at the moment, but I'm not having any sort of long-term concerns with it. We talked about Jaylen Brown earlier. No, we didn't. We talked about Jayson Tatum earlier. Let's talk about his teammate, Jaylen Brown.
JB, you've done it again.
He's averaging 39 fantasy points per game this season. Yeah, that's good. That's the 35th ranked player. But over the last week, he's at 64th. He's actually outside the top 40 over the last month as well. So why are these numbers down? Well, I think the thing we look at is he hasn't blocked a shot in 2 weeks. So that's he's not a high shot blocker, but that's half a block a game. That's 1.5 points. You've already lost that there. He's averaging just 21 points over the last 2 games with that shoulder problem. He's not getting any assists. In fact, he's under 2 assists per game over the last month. And he's had just 3 assists in his last 2 games combined. So there you go. Like the assists, which were really high to begin this year, have fallen way off. And that has coincided with Kemba Walker's return and Marcus Smart playing at a higher level and Jayson Tatum doing more playmaking. And then the scoring has dropped off as well. So while he's averaged 39 per game this year, I look at him more as a 36 to 37 point per game player as we move forward. Guys, that'll do it for me today. Don't forget, if you are watching this on YouTube, drop a comment down below. Give me 1 thumb. Give me 2 thumbs. I know you can't do it, but do it anyway. And just subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Hey, if you're on Apple Podcasts, why don't you follow over there, Apple Podcasts. You can do it on Google Podcasts. You can do it on Stitcher. You can do it on Spotify. You can also do it on the new Odyssey app. Go subscribe, follow, do all those things. It's a great way of helping out the show. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.